Hello, welcome to Mike's Mets podcast. I'm your host, Mike Pashota, and let's talk about that game from last night with the Miami Marlins. The Mets would lose the game 2-1 in what was a thankfully short but painful to watch performance from the New York Mets. And there's really nothing to say that much. There was honestly very little to talk about. I will talk about the highlights or lowlights, so to speak, from what saw last night. And truthfully, we got a pretty solid performance from David Peterson. I will critique some things that I saw, which was mainly the fact that he didn't walk many batters, really only one walk over the course of 5 innings. He was throwing a lot of pitches. The Marlins were really making him work, and he got himself out of a lot of jams. This is mostly because the Marlins are just a very ineffective offense, but he allows 8 base hits, and he's just kind of a lot of resetting and reloading for him. So he was able to work his way out of a couple of jams, and truthfully, he got helped out on a couple of occasions by his defense, most notably when Francisco Lindor makes that leaping catch to save a base hit during the game. So he was doing his job, but really 5 innings is not really what you want from your starter, particularly after Scherzer had only gone 6 innings the game prior. So we saw a couple of innings of relief from Tommy Hunter. Tommy Hunter really good, looking like he might get a larger role in the bullpen this year, particularly with the changeup that the Mets had to go through after the Diaz injury. So Tommy Hunter, a good performance from him. He would go pitch 2 shutout innings, only allowing 1 base hit over those 2 innings. But unfortunately, they would run into some trouble later on in that game. So ultimately, this game would go just 2-1 in it. I didn't really see much from the team's offense, and while the bullpen was fine, ultimately it was John Curtis who gave up what turned out to be the game-winning run in terms of a home run to Jazz Chisholm Jr. So John Curtis in his first really outing this year, not looking too good, and Curtis was brought over after some troubling performances with Miami and Milwaukee last year. He was kind of an under the radar acquisition. People thought he might be a solid addition to the middle relief, but it's not really what you want to see there. Now, ultimately, one run shouldn't have cost it for the Mets, but unfortunately, the issue was their offense really not getting into gear, and you can put a decent amount behind the fact that the Marlins starter Jesus Luzardo looked sharp. He allowed only 2 base hits, but he walked 4 batters, and the Mets really did not take advantage of anything that they were given in this case. So he would only allow 2 base hits over the 5 2/3 innings that he pitched, but again, 4 walks. So the Mets were getting base runners on, but failing to come through in any situation. And you just have to look at the batting line for a lot of these guys, and it's just Francisco Lindor over 2. He would walk a couple of times, but striking out in big situations, and in particular, I'm going to point to the situation in the 6th inning where the Mets, or yeah, 6th inning, where the Mets had the bases loaded and were threatening, and they had Pete Alonso up. Alonso would pop out, and it was another situation where they had a chance to, kind of bust through in the second where they really needed it, but unfortunately led to some issues. Alonso would redeem himself later in the game. In the 9th inning, he would hit his first home run of the season. Nice to see that he got off to a good start. It was an opposite field home run, so nice to see also that he wasn't trying to just pull it all the way. But mainly, this is just a big problem, and one of the bigger problems I'm noticing early on in the Mets lineup. And again, we're only 2 games in, so let's not jump all over them. So yeah, but the bottom half of the lineup really struggling, and part of this was Jeff McNeil going over 4 in this game, and he was facing a left-handed starter, so there was who's definitely going to be against him in terms of being at a disadvantage. But you really were looking for a little bit more from McNeil in the bottom half of that lineup, and then Eduardo Escobar kind of continuing what he did during the spring, just not looking very good, and Tommy Pham would go over 2 in the game before he was replaced by Luis Guillorme. Tomas Nido, basically a guaranteed out, and this is the thing that we have to look at and say, like, this is troubling situations where they have guys who just really cannot hit at the bottom of that lineup. And Tommy Pham, Tomas Nido, and Eduardo Escobar. And Escobar, we hope he might get himself right on later in the year. But Pham and Nido just can't get it done. And there are the situations where they're going to be at a real disadvantage, and they need the top of the lineup to kind of facilitate things a little bit better than they did in this game. So it was a very short game. I think that the total time was about 2 hours and like 20. It was like 2 hours and 20 minutes, something like that. The official game time it was, but I know that it ended really before I even had a chance to get into it. I was watching most of the game uh, on in the Gamecast forum, so I didn't even get a chance to even to look at most of it. I was checking out the highlights later on, but this was just I didn't see the total number because it went by so fast, and this is a situation where pitchers duels in this new pitch clock format are going to go by real quick. So ultimately, this was a unsuccessful contest from the Mets. And honestly, not much to point to in terms of positives. I will say that Peterson looked solid, but you gotta pitch longer 5 innings really to be effective. And then it's problematic with the bottom of the Mets lineup. They have to get it going, and guys at the top of the lineup, like Brandon Nimmo, you can't have those over 3 nights where he's just not looking very effective at the plate. And again, if this is a situation where they're going to be facing left-handed starters, they're going to problem. They're going to be at a huge disadvantage if they just can't get it going against the lefties. So things to look forward to or look at later on during the year. But the Mets have to make some adjustments there, and we'll see what they do. So next game coming up will be tonight at 4:10 p.m. The Mets will be facing the Marlins again, and it'll be a matchup between Tyler McGill, who was brought up to replace Justin Verlander due to the injury that they were experiencing. And then for the Miami Marlins, I believe it's going to be Edward Cabrera. Eduardo Cabrera. So we'll have that to look forward to. So McGill, an important start for him to see if where exactly he's going to match up in this situation. And this is going to be like an extended spring training for McGill and Peterson with the injuries to the Mets rotation early on. So they're going to be looking at McGill and seeing how well he fares. He started off last year really good. Unfortunately, he ran into injuries and then inconsistent performances after that. So we'll have to see how he performs in this one, and it will be like an extended audition for McGill to see how he performs for the remainder of the year and what role he may, in fact, be taking on with the Mets, whether it's going to be in the starting rotation or possibly the bullpen or swingman role. So McGill, an important moment for him coming up. So I hope you enjoyed this podcast. Thank you for listening to the Mike Spence podcast. Please be sure to follow us on Spotify and subscribe to our YouTube channel as well. Finally, please also follow the podcast Twitter, which is Mike Spence Pod, all one word. Appreciate your time and have a wonderful rest of your day or evening. Let's go, Mets.